Welcome to the Questionistas. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Spencer.
Quick disclaimer, this is for education and entertainment purposes. If you need help, please seek a professional. We are not experts, doctors, nor dragons, nor do we give medical advice. Take our words with a gallon of salt.
Hey, Thomas, what's the question today?
The question is, why is it hard to relate to other people?
Awesome. Fortunately, I'm a social butterfly and have no problems with this whatsoever.
So you're a butterfly, you're not a human then.
Oh, crap. You've discovered my secret.
You're just a bunch of butterflies in a trench coat?
Yes. and man, am I fun at a party.
Oh, goodness. One of the most important aspects of why is it so hard to relate to other people has to do with our biases about like negativity or differences or just things that are lost or missing. Well, first off, I like using evolutionary psychology metaphors, even if they're not 100% why we got that way. But when it comes to a focus on the negative, the person who was just chill with everything that was going on has a lot of ways to die in the evolutionary environment. And the person who is in a state of vigilance, you know, they talk about stress killing you nowadays.
Uh-huh.
But when there's so many threats out there all the time, that stress was there to keep you safe.
Yeah.
So now we are safe, but we still feel stressed. So this relates to a couple of fallacies that we have that, again, they exist to protect us. But we talk about a couple of them. There's negativity and gaps. It's easier to notice negative things or missing things because we have a desire to avoid the bad or avoid losses. We've talked about sunk cost fallacy. That one's related.
Yeah.
But then the other part of this, we talked about the negativity part, but there's difference biases, which is sometimes call this appeal to purity or fear of contamination. It's the concept of sameness equals safety. And that may have come from hunter-gatherer tribes or groups of humans a long time ago. And your family and friends group are more likely to look like you. And so there's this sameness that makes you know, oh, this is a part of my group. They're not going to kill me to get access to the same food or something.
What does that have to do with now? People look different than us more than ever in some ways because we can have that diversity in not needing to maintain survivability through hunter-gathering practices. We're able to have a lot of people survive and maintain themselves in so many different ways that it allows for a diversity, whether it's within community, city, neighborhood, or in a workplace. It seems, though, that we still find ways to find people that look and act and think similar to us to a point of fault.
Well, I mean, in this state, the state of Utah, you mentioned BYU and the University of Utah, and from a lot of people, you're going to get strong, emotional, tribal reactions, which is always funny to me because, I mean, I have my own, I'm human. I have tendencies toward tribalism too, but, you know, people be like, oh yeah, what team are you rooting for? And I'm like, I hate football, and I, at least my English degree, I hated college so much I graduated. So sometimes people are like, hey, here's this binary, and I'll transition us to that. We can get back to some of our other points in a little bit. This binary or spectrum, where are you? I don't like that binary or spectrum. Have you ever done the Pottermore house quiz?
Oh yeah, I think I'm a Ravenloft.
No, you're not.
Ravenloft. That's
Ravenclaw.
Ravenclaw. That's what it is.
Oh man, and like after all these things I've learned about like tribalism and psychology and stuff like that, I'm just like, this is bad. Like, you're setting kids up. Okay, here's this group identity with something to what's the word? Aspire to.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's a group identity that includes like a package of behaviors, a package of beliefs, and a package of ideas about who you are and who you're supposed to be. And it's like the hat, I don't know. The hat is doing some combination of where you'd fit in the best, what describes you the best. Oh, but also your choice is a factor, but I'm only going to tell you that if you like say that you dislike my like maybe Slytherin. I don't want to be in Slytherin. Oh, okay. Well, you can make a choice. That's fine. You can be Gryffindor. And it's like you get these like self-fulfilling prophecies with all these like kids, and it's like people like, man, why do all the bad people come out of Slytherin? It's like, yeah, why do all the bad people come out of Slytherin? Because you've created a culture of, and then of course people respond to me saying stuff like that with, so you're a Ravenclaw.
It must be a Ravenclaw. Only a Ravenclaw would make a big deal about this stuff.
I'm just like, shut up. That's not, I mean, maybe you're, no. I dislike the whole thing. I've got a little note here of something that I wrote a while ago. Beware false binaries, for there are often more choices.
Okay.
Beware false spectrums, for there are often more dimensions.
So then back up for a second. Why do binaries exist? Why do spectrums exist in the first place?
Do they?
Well,
exist beyond our heads?
No, and I want to argue, well, you're just doing semantics. I can totally agree that they're social constructs. That
doesn't mean they're useless, but
doesn't mean they're useless. That's the point I'm trying to get to.
Well, and it kind of goes back to George E.P. Buck's, all models are wrong, but some are useful.
Okay. Which then how do we take advantage but not overuse a spectrum or a binary or a social construct that helps us understand other people? Because I think at the end of the day, you're always going to be able to respond to any spectrum, any construct, say, well, it's more complex than that. Well, no, duh. There's always a higher level of math than the math that you're discussing at the moment. So that's not necessarily valuable to the situation. But how do you I feel like I'm leading the question again. How do you know when to allow for more complex conversation or more complex construct than when it is
kind of going back to some
simple.
of our kind of going back to some of the biases we've talked about before, the tendency to oversimplify. My thought would be, how do you know when to have a more complex conversation or to just rely on that shorthand?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you know when, but I do know that you should do it about 50 times more than you do. And then people respond with, but that's mentally exhausting. I'm like, yeah. Welcome to the universe.
Do what 50 times more? Explain on that.
Oh, yeah. What I want you to do 50 times more is when you're having a conversation and involves some sort of either black and white or a spectrum or categories, say that it's complicated. Say that these are not perfect way more often than you do. It will be uncomfortable for a while because you're starting to shake up that rigid model of reality that you have.
So one,
you can float like a butterfly and sting like a beamer. Wait, sorry, that's a mixture of cars and that one.
And metaphors. I'll tell you one that I've ran into, and you mentioned the rivalry between the schools in Utah. I graduated from University of Utah, and I don't like mentioning that too much because they're like, well, your team's not doing too well this year. I'm like, my team is not, I could care less. Mainly because when I'm happy to watch a football game, a basketball game. I love sports and being able to watch them, but I'll root for whatever play is a good play. And so I can confuse the heck out of whoever's sitting next to me because I'll be cheering for one team, and if I see a bad call, I see a bad call. If I see a good play, I see a good play, and I'll cheer for it. And for me to be able to, I'm not trying to say I'm better than everyone else, but I have to consciously place myself in that position. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit there and fight for one team and sit myself in the binary, which maybe I'm just a little weird. That's not as fun as rooting for good plays and being excited for a good score and a good series of events that lead up to. That was some good teamwork. I don't care who you are, that you got to be able to appreciate that.
Well, and I think that's a good mindset to have. I'm going to, not so that we can get too specific on it, but I'm going to drag the elephant into the room.
Uh-huh.
And one thing that got us talking about this today was a lot of the political hatred, divisiveness in American politics today.
Sure.
It is, let's see, January 25th, 2026. And if you go and look at the news for around this time, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. I barely look at Facebook now because of so many fiery hot takes and people slamming each other and like just so much demonizing. And yeah, a lot of it goes back to those tribal instincts and those simplifying things into binaries and spectrums. But I mean, also, I mean, you get people who have a tribe that they care about, who have a simplified model of the world, or I should say oversimplified because they're all simplified. You have people who are passionate, they think they have a moral imperative for their side. I know people on the more liberal side who have a, this is kind of drawing from Jonathan Haidt's research, who put a large emphasis on care and equal outcomes for everybody. And then there's people on the other side of the spectrum who have a greater focus on maybe things like loyalty or purity, or the rewards should be equal to your efforts, and if somebody does more efforts then they should get more rewards. So they're talking about equality as well, but a slightly different kind. Anyway, so they have these moral motivations behind them, and everyone is just crunching against each other. And actually, no, I want you to say your thing first about the Overton window.
Sure. I think this is a really interesting phenomena, that the Overton window is basically, you're on a spectrum. Everyone can agree there's -1, there's 0, and there's 1. What we think as 0 or the center is a healthy location. If you stray too far from that, then there's dangers, there's extremism.
Got a little bit of a middle path Buddhism in there. Not too much, not too little, just right.
Just right. Yeah.
Goldilocks and
And
the Three Bears.
yeah. And so, however, what happens is, as rhetoric increases for or against one of the sides, the Overton window shifts. And so the Overton window is shifting so that it's more the center. What we thought was the center is now at zero 0.5 or -5, negative 0.5. And so it's closer to the left, and then it shifts everything over. And so now we're not talking about -1 to 1, we're talking about -5 to -3. And so what used to be highly considered extreme is now no longer extreme, and it's the norm. And I'm
Yeah,
trying.
well, and there's a lot of that going on between, like, I have probably more liberal friends than conservative friends. Again, oversimplification of their political beliefs. But you hear this, people talking about like moderation and being in the middle, and it is demonized. And like, oh, you're a moderate, that just means you're
Indecisive.
indecisive, or you're kind of on the right. What do we want? Moderation. When do we want it? In a reasonable time frame.
Yeah.
See, it's hard to use rhetoric to get people emotionally riled up about moderation, both in the sense of being in the center and of just slowing down and trying to analyze more.
Yeah, and even to the point, it ties into religious connotation in the book of Revelation. There's a scripture in the New Testament that says, "I'd rather you're cold or warm, or cold or hot, and not lukewarm." And lukewarm has become vilified as this ability to uh, be able to uh, be valuable, and that's unfortunate because that ability to cross bridges, that ability to be able to communicate to more than just people that are just like you, I think is a very dangerous place, and it's very scary uh, because you're not able to expound or expand upon anything. And I don't have anything at the top of my head. I wish I did, of some cognitive science, truth to that, but that's just a very dangerous place, that you're not able to think out of people that are just like you.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with a certain skill called theory of mind, which is the
Okay.
ability to imagine the mindset of somebody different than you. Reading fiction, or actually reading stories, I should say, are a really good way to build this skill. Because for a lot of books, it dunks you into the consciousness of another kind of person. Travel helps with this too.
I'll give you one that's I think it was attributed to Mark Twain. He said the the best way to combat bigotry is to travel.
Yeah, that's great for people with money and paid vacation days.
Agreed.
So, but one thing I want to talk about in relation to this is continuing about spectrums. I'm going to repeat my quote from earlier. Beware false binaries, for there are often more choices. Beware false spectrums, for there are often more dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I don't know if I want to add something to this, but here's a really good example of a false spectrum. Love and hate.
Okay.
I think that's a false spectrum. Or if people treat it as a spectrum, or a false binary. Let's take love for a second. If we focus on a specific kind, which is caring about the well being of other people versus caring about the well being of yourself. Some people lean so hard into caring about what other people need or think that they are nervous wrecks because they're worried about everyone else all the time. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who care only about themselves and only about how they feel, and they just stomp over everyone else's feelings all the time. And so there's this, that's a different kind of spectrum. So sometimes when you're thinking, oh, am I more this or more that? Like, not only is the spectrum, like, not only are there more dimensions to go with, but that spectrum itself could be false. And that's what I think about the political spectrum. That we have this whole left and right thing. And if you narrow it down to like specific principles, like maybe economics or something, you can make it a bit truer of a spectrum. But when you talk about people on the left and people on the right and what they believe, it's a kind of a package of an arbitrarily selected package of beliefs. I don't want to tell people what to think, and I'm not even sure what I completely think about these things anymore. But I used to say, I think human caused climate change is real and that abortion is wrong in most cases. And when I would say that, most of the time, the entire room now hates me.
Right. Well,
Because I just.
and what's the fallacy of arguments are soldiers?
Yes, arguments are soldiers. Conceding any point is joining the enemy, and criticizing any point on your side is stabbing your own soldiers in the back.
Yeah. And so making the statement you did, you might as well be a double agent, because at this point I don't know if I can trust you, and I don't know what
I
side you're
know.
on.
What a crappy team player I am. I mean, how are we going to get together and walk for miles and hunt that dang mammoth that we need for food and fur if I'm not going to be a good team player?
Yeah.
So I've talked about the problems with spectrums and how they're all false. But again, we did have that quote from George E.P. Bucks: "All models are wrong, but some are useful." So, and we're going to get more into this about the ideology, but let's talk about it with the spectrums in general. Um, you were talking about spectrums of social constructs, and they have their value. So, what is their value?
I think one idea that the brain likes efficiency. You could say the brain is lazy. I think it's not as generous of a take, but the human brain,
Energy conservative.
it's energy conservative. It's efficient. It tries to be efficient as at all times, and so it's trying to figure out what is a situation that is safe and what is a situation that's not safe. Um, and and in some places, it's I want to have a conversation about something. Yeah, I'll talk about this a little bit later in the importance of play. But yesterday, for the first time ever, I was playing a game with someone, and we were having fun. We were working together, and we were laughing, and we were enjoying each other's company. We worked with each other. He trusted me. I trusted him. However, I was really concerned about asking him too much about him outside of the game, because I was like, I don't know if I want him to know what I believe, because I'm not sure if he's going to be a safe person to be able to talk about those things. Because if he disagrees with me, knowing the situation, I was more cautious than I probably could have been or should have been, in that I didn't want to bring up a topic and say, well, actually, you're wrong on this and you're dumb. And then he's saying, well, you're wrong and you're dumb. And then we hate each other and then we can't play the game. Because at the end of the day, my goal was I just wanted to play the game with him. I wasn't too concerned about his other belief systems. Um, and
And
so,
we had a writing conference that I go to, and there's a rule for let's stay away from political topics. And there's a lot of people that I became friends with that I didn't really learn their political leanings until I became friends with them on Facebook, and now I kind of regret that because I really like those people, but the strong feelings I get about their political statements threatens that friendship I developed in a non-political context.
yeah, and I think that that's where it starts losing its value. Is at some point you do need to have a full relationship with certain people, but I think, and sometimes, I don't know, maybe you can only compartmentalize them and saying, hey, your value is in your writing, and I can bounce ideas off of you in this, but I'm not going to extend my relationship beyond that. And so I figured out where you're safe and I figured out where you're not safe. And I can set boundaries for myself and allow myself uh, to only talk to you about certain things, because I don't want to bother talking about those other things. I don't know. That's I'm trying to give a sunny side perspective to your situation, but you know, I don't know if that works with everyone. As much as I want to be confident about it, I'm not sure if that's going to work for everyone, because I think we talked about Bill Cosby in the past, that how do you disconnect the creator's work from the creator if you know that the creator is doing bad things?
And should you? There
And
are
should
people
you?
who have the opinion that you shouldn't.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think the social consensus for Bill Cosby was definitely no, you should not separate it, and
Can't
his
make
name
any
is
references to Cthulhu because H.P. Lovecraft was a racist.
right. It which is ironic, because there's multiple game systems around the concepts of Lovecraftian horror, and in some ways every time I've seen people talk about it, they're just like, yeah, we acknowledge its origins, but we reject those origins and we move on past that, you know. I somehow some people are more tactful in managing those distinctions of either origins or a bad history. Um, but it at the end of the day, you have to come face to face with that, and
Oh
I
God,
and
Peop-
in some
go
ways,
go
it's
ahead.
an Overton window. I think there's an Overton window of our tolerance for someone's creation versus someone being a creator and the actions as a creator was tolerated in the past, and that's shifted, and so the Overton window isn't inherently evil, but it's a natural phenomena that happens on how we view content, how we view creation, how we view creators, and sometimes people get away with it, if to say it crassly, but some people don't.
Yeah, and for some people, it is morally worse to be in that to be in a more moderate, neutral position, or just a less extreme position
Mm-hmm.
than to be at either extreme. Oh gosh, it's exhausting. In fact, another good example of that is people's reactions to J.K. Rowling,
Sure.
and we even brought up Harry Potter earlier. Um, People's reactions to J.K. Rowling, who has made statements related to gender identity. I'll just simplify it to that. Um, and seeing people's reactions to that, people in and out of the LGBTQ community. Um, I know some people who are uh, very much disagree with what she has said more recently about gender, and they still love Harry Potter.
Right.
And like,
And I know a lot of people that swear to have nothing to do with anything related to new, you know, and they're still putting out new stuff. They're planning on having a new show on HBO, and they're gonna have they've had a video game that came out a couple years ago related to Harry Potter, and so some people are like, yeah, I want nothing to do with it.
there's two things I want to kind of talk about here is that I want to get into in other episodes. One of them is how to have effective conversations with people that are so different than you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really great book about that. I'm not going to talk about that today, though. I want to focus on why we get so defensive about our tribes.
Sure.
I want to read a quote from Lord of the Rings, and I think it was Faramir who said this. No, wait, no. Sorry, rewind. In the film, Faramir says it. In the book, Frodo thinks it. In
Okay.
both of them, it's the same context. They're looking at a dead Haradrim soldier, some guy from the south who's, coming in to invade. And I think this version is the version from the film. So this is what I want people to think whenever they think of somebody who is on the opposite side of them, somebody who is their enemy, who they want to go to war with ideologically or whatever. His sense of duty was no less than yours, I deem. You wonder what his name is, where he came from, and if he was really evil at heart. What lies or threats led him on this long march from home, if he would not rather have stayed there in peace? War will make corpses of us all.
I think the my favorite part of that is the you wonder what his name is, where it came from. War classically attempts to dehumanize the other side as much as possible, and I think that's that sense of humanity that comes from that statement of spending the time to actually understand who that other person is, instead of just saying that they are a bad person, they are wrong, they are awful, they they are fully aware of their decision to make the choices that they did. uh,
I think
you
this
know
was also in Jonathan Haidt's one of Jonathan Haidt's works. But he talked about a situation, I think it was Vietnam, where that backfired, where
Interesting.
you had they looked at people who defected to, was it Vietnam or Korea? Doesn't matter. Who defected to the other side. American soldiers who defected to the other side. And almost all of them came from this very specific boot camp. And that boot camp had an emphasis on training that demonized the other side. Whereas the other boot camps were either neutral or didn't even really focus on that aspect of like, okay, here's why they're bad or good or whatever, just ignored them or whatever. Um,
Interesting.
so you'd think that those are the people who would fight more viciously. And you know what? Maybe before they were fighting more viciously. But when they started to see that these people were also people, they were humans, that made some kind of backfire effect where they're like, wait a minute, my country, but it's really their training facility, lied to me and said that these people are inhuman monsters. And they're not. They're people too.
It makes it 10 times worse thinking about the propaganda, and I'll use the word propaganda because I believe it is propaganda
Yeah.
of of using false information to label, and the false statements to label people from the other side. And it goes back to my statement of, I can watch a game, but if I see a foul, I'll call a foul, and we should be able to call a foul when it happens, and we shouldn't worry about, well, our side said so, so I guess that's what they are. And I think,
Oh, no. The
unfortunately,
biases that happen there, like people suck at seeing fouls on their side and are so prone to calling fouls on the other side and being like, oh, that ref wasn't fair.
yeah,
Like it is so strong in people.
yeah, and we're seeing that politically, a lot of instances where calls are made in, by the refs, by judges, and there's a lot of disagreement on, not only, excuse me, not even just a disagreement, but just blatant, we're going to punish them for their call, we're going to see them, well, we haven't gotten as far as seeing them hang, but that's the phrase that comes to mind, is we're gonna see them
Oh, just look at some
suffer
of the
for the
sports
consequences.
related violence in ancient Rome. Some of the sports related violence in ancient Rome. Yeah, yeah, it was to the point of like hanging people.
How about ancient my high school? Like there was death threats, and there was escorts for the refs on certain games, and just in high school for basketball sometimes, because
Where was
the
this?
this was it doesn't matter what high school it was, but I'm almost
Or I just
positive
mean like what
everyone
state, what part of the United States?
in New Mexico. I mean it,
Okay.
but
I
it's
mean, even
just,
then, you're right. That doesn't matter.
there's rival games, and there's rival teams, and there's such heated rivalries that when the ref makes a call and everyone disagrees with it, that there's stories of high school refs, which these guys are getting paid like $10 an hour to, which is like $20 to be refs for a high school game. They're not doing any of this for the money necessarily, but they make a bad call, and all of a sudden there's some drunk idiots out in the parking lot that want to beat them up after the game because their team lost because of the ref. You know, it's and that did actually happen in Maine. That there was escorts that had to happen because
So
of
funny.
threats against refs. And so, it's that's where it fails, right? That's where the tribes, but that's also an understanding of that, if whether we agree with it or not, that's the nature of our tribes. That's the nature of why we get so defensive with our tribes. And it's in a way scary, but we now have the knowledge of how they operate. So then what can we do? What is our value or benefit, knowing that we can do better than that? We know that there's the defensiveness in the tribes. We know that there's risk of the judges and the refs. We know that there's there's risk of dehumanizing the other side. How do we combat against that? How do we make sure that we don't live in an us versus them mentality?
Well, I think one really important part of that is we're all humans.
Okay.
And when it comes to our identities that we're looking at, I think that's the most important thing. One thing that I've said before, I don't know if I've said it on this podcast or not, is that when you look at other people who are different than you and you list their differences, and maybe you come up with a huge list of like 50 things, if you started listing the similarities, and this has to include similarities that you don't want to include, like 10 toes. It's like, oh, yeah, that one's obvious. Like, no, it seems obvious. But if you list all the similarities, those differences are like 2%. Like 98% of what makes us human across all people, no matter your life experience or your identity or your gender or your religion. And I don't know if this made up percentage is accurate, but 98% of that list is the same. It's just so easy to see the differences. We have biases that kind of push us that way. But we are all so much the same.
What are ways that we can experience that? So, I mean, we can say that. So are you saying put that on a sticky note and read that to yourself every morning? You know, I mean, that's an option.
Oh, you want something practical, huh?
Yeah, I think I want something practical. I think at this point, things are getting so heated within the United States and within other countries that I want to leave us with something that's a little more practical than just the highest level. And you know, which is so counterintuitive to this podcast, because we love to stay at 10,000 feet a lot of the time, 20,000 feet. But I want to get a little closer. We don't have to be ground level necessarily, but
Yeah, I mean, I do want to get us more practical, because we get to the question of, so what? What now?
the one that comes to mind, and I kind of suggested, is play. And ironically, the funny thing about play is you recognize that in a soccer game, you're on a specific team. You're in the social construct of a specific team for 90 minutes. But the big important thing is what's happening for that 90 minutes with the people that you're playing with. And then also, you don't have to be on that team anymore. You can play within the spectrum or the binary for a moment, but afterwards you're not. And there's a lot of really interesting science around play theory, game theory, that allows you to gain trust while playing with someone a game. And this can be a board game, a sports game, video game.
A trust fall at a work retreat?
Trust fall at a work retreat. That just
It's
scares me just
approaching
thinking
it.
about it.
It's
It's getting
approaching
there.
it, but
It's getting there.
it's not there. It's getting there, but it's not there.
It's getting there, but it's not there. I no science on the trust fall exercise, but I'm sure someone's done it. But just the nature of you playing a game, there are rules. But the rules don't matter after the 90 minutes, after the game session's over. You get to learn how someone is, and you get to know them quicker, and you're able to gain trust on that person a lot sooner. And you're able to make great relationships within play sessions in a way that allows you to get to know that person to a point where, yeah, after a couple more sessions with this new guy that I played with yesterday, I will be able to have that conversation, and I will feel safer about it than just, hey, so what's your name? Cool. What do you think about what happened in the news yesterday? You know, I don't think I'm ever going to do that, even though I've had people pull that trick on me. And it's like, I haven't talked to you for over a year, and you're asking me what happened in the news yesterday as if I'm supposed to agree with you. Yeah, this is a trap. This is straight up some Admiral Akbar nonsense. I'm not sticking for this. But play at its core allows us to experience in some ways a sense of tribalism where the stakes don't necessarily matter long term, and it allows us to gain trust with the other people. So that's my thing that we could do at its.
So, yeah, I kind of did that the other day. I went to lunch with a coworker. So I used to be Mormon. I'm not Mormon anymore. He still is. And we were able to have a really interesting discussion. I didn't like pull out all of my stuff, all my research or whatever, but we were able to have a really good, interesting discussion that related to Mormonism. And I was able to play in that space of that worldview
Mhm.
because and I used to have a problem with doing that because I was like, it feels dishonest to not just blurt out, I think this is all baloney when people bring it up. But got to look at your goals. What would that do? In fact, most of the time, what what is your goal here? Is it to proudly proclaim what tribe you're a part of? Like if you were playing D&D with this guy, or
Uh-huh.
sorry, a game, did we want to keep it
D
vague
and
too?
D. It was D&D. I can accept I'm a nerd.
Nerds are
I'll own
great.
that part of my identity.
But like kind of like at my writing conference too, like what would you achieve by bringing up those things, like the feeling of self-righteousness that you were defending your perspective, and like what would it do for me to bring that up to my friend, that my criticisms and stuff to my friend about religion in general? It would have just hurt our relationship.
Right. So I do want to point out two games that I want people to play. They're single player. No one else gets to play them, but they're simulations, and they're very topical to the discussion today. They're on a website called Nick from Nikki Case. That's the individual that's created these. And one of them is called The Parable of the Polygons. And this is based off of research from a Nobel Prize winner in social science from the 70s. And he basically just gamifies it and allows you to play in this interactive experience. And then the other one that he creates is We Become What We Behold. And it talks about propaganda and
Oh,
information.
I've
You've
heard of
probably
that
seen
one.
these. Yeah, you've probably seen these, you Thomas. But if you've never seen these are We Become What We Behold and Parable of the Polygons are two really fantastic experiences that you can have. Again, play is really important to me, and playing games is a place where we, similar to, prior to digital technology, reading a book can do the same thing, that it can open up your mind to other people's personalities and perspectives of life. But the interactiveness of games, I think, is something that above and beyond. Anyways, we
Ooh, I'm gonna
become
have
what
to
be.
fight you.
What's that?
I said, you're talking about books and you're like, oh, the interactivity of games is something puts it above and beyond. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to have to fight you. But maybe
Yeah.
that's, did I just have a
Well.
tribal reaction?
Oh my gosh, what? Um. Yeah, I'm not dying on that hill necessarily, because I think there's value in books. Um. But there is something unique in the interactive experiences of games, and I think there's some absolutely gorgeous games out there that you can play to have some very visceral experiences, in so much that I've cried while playing them. But these two, Parable of the Polygons, talks about diversity. It talks about, and it shows you the value in having diverse areas of just neighborhoods in it, but it conceptually can extend to many other places. We Become What We Behold takes about 5 minutes, and you go through the experience of what happens when an event occurs and how people react to that, um, both negatively and positively, and how propaganda can spread really quickly. Um, so those are two homework assignments that I've got people, but but there's plenty of others there, whether it is books. I got to believe that there's books out there that like Lord of the Rings, that have just such profound quotes that can stick with you for days, years, or lifetime. Um, in being able to think, wow, I never would have thought of that from that perspective before. Um, I'll add one to your list of that's very similar. I think one of my favorite themes, which is it's there, but it's not necessarily as prominent in Ender's Game, where the whole in the back of his mind he's constantly thinking about who is this enemy that we're fighting. It's an alien force, but he's trying to figure out who they are, and he's trying to quote Sun Tzu basically by saying to know thy enemy is to know thyself. And he's trying to figure out why he's fighting this enemy, not just because they're a faceless evil. And that one is a really powerful story, or section part of that story that I feel like gets under identified amongst all the cool sci-fi nonsense that happens in that book.
Oh, what does he say? Something else on top of that. In order to defeat your enemy, you must first understand your enemy.
Yeah.
And in that moment of understanding, you also love them. And then you
Yes.
destroy them.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very, I think you got it far closer than I could remember. But that notion of you have to love them and then destroy them, if
or
for them to
just
be your enemy.
the action of understanding. And you know what? I think that I'm going to make a couple of comments about play, and then we'll wrap this one up.
Okay.
Is like I did with that friend, I was playing the role of being on Team X in a way that I didn't feel like I was being dishonest, but that but not only that, and we'll get into this in our effective conversations, how do you maintain a relationship with people that are such a strong position from yours? Seek to understand them, ask them questions, learn about them, and learning without judgment. Because if they tell you something that's a part of their identity and you immediately attack it, then, well, first off, you've failed at the goal of understanding them, and second off, if you don't understand them, then how can you work with them? So either way, this kind of goes back to one major point that I'm going to harp on, and that is effectiveness. It's not enough to be good. It's not enough to be right. By the way, you're also probably not as right as you think. It's not enough. You have to be effective. And if every time you talk to somebody with a different opinion than you, it turns into a fight, then I don't give a rat's patootie if you're on the right side, quote unquote. You're doing your side a disservice because you're failing at working with the other humans that you have to work with in order to improve or change the world that you're in.
Well, gosh dang it, I don't think there's anything more to be said about that, unless you got any other ideas about play.
When talking to people so different from you, playing a role or exploring the space of ideas and relationships, it's so much more effective than trying to push some agenda. Or just like, before you try to do things, try to understand them. Try to understand the people different from you.
Yeah.
Try to find the places that you are the same, because the vast majority of who you are is the same as everyone else. Ooh, I'm telling people what to believe. Am I right? Am I wrong? If I'm wrong, tell me and how. I think that's a good stopping point. Spence, you got a question we can leave them with?
I think the big question is, what else can you do? I mean, we've talked about some options with play, but what other ways do you extend humanity to other people in places and ways that aren't seen normally?
All right. I like that. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day and keep asking questions.